When you're a non-technical person in a technical world, you have your own kind of superpowers.
Do you think EQ can be taught?
That's a very good question. There's a few things in life that I have found hard to teach. I think EQ is one. I think judgment is another. Taste. There's no crutch. You may use different tools or toys to get the work done. AI is just the latest flavor of that. You're still the judge of what good looks like.
Welcome to This Is Working, where leaders share their strategies for success and the lessons that shape them. Google CMO Lorraine Twohill credits her success to her emotional acuity and social awareness. Lorraine runs a team of 4,000 people whose marketing prowess has grown Chrome into the world's #1 browser, and recently launched Gemini. All this by being a self-proclaimed non-tech person in the tech world. Lorraine, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here with you.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. And by the way, I totally identify with that of being a non-tech person in the tech world, so we're going to bond over that.
Wonderful.
You've been at Google for over 20 years, and
That's
you've
true.
been the CMO for 16, if I got that right.
15. Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about your career journey, what led you to Google and to this role?
Sure. I studied marketing in college. I was being a lifelong marketer. It's been a wonderful career, and I've enjoyed every step of the way. And before Google, I worked at the travel.com in Europe, and I ended up being one of Google's biggest customers. I got to know the Google folks very well. At the time, Google was very small, really just establishing itself in Europe. And so they asked me to come to our head office and meet with them. And I thought I was going as a VIP client, but it turned out 22 interviews later that I was being interviewed for one of their first roles in Europe. So,
I'm sorry, when you went to this, you didn't know you were being interviewed for the job?
well, it was come visit our head office. And, and then suddenly I was thrown into meeting all of these people who were interviewing me, clearly. And it turned out to be great. And, the interviews were on beanbags or in line for barbecue, or, it was wonderful. And I ended up joining the team and jumping on board. A lot of people at the time thought I was nuts. What is this Google thing? It was a small company at the time. But, of course, that was, really exciting.
Was it a tough decision to make the move from the UK to the US?
For a start, this was the third time the role was open, and I hadn't put my hand up any of those 3 times. And the only reason I even did the third time was because they came to me and said, look, we really want you to come do this. And, that's what convinced me, really. Like, I would never have put my hand up by myself.
Why not?
I just didn't think I have enough confidence in myself. Even though I was sort of 5-6 years into the company, I was in Europe, so I still felt like kind of relatively new. And I don't know, I just didn't have enough confidence in myself at the time. So I talk about that a lot with women, especially, to say, put your hand up. Even if you're 75% ready, have the conversation, go through the interview process, because you'll learn and you'll, get to know more people just through that, even if in the end you're not the candidate they choose. I had to literally be talked into it by 3 people, 3 men, I might add, 3 senior people who talked me into it. It wasn't even deciding to move that was the hard part. It was convincing me to even do the job in the first place. Once I decided to do it, my husband was amazing. And he said, why not? Let's move to the US for a few years. It'll be our great Californian adventure.
So you got your confidence through this process.
I mean, I think I did. I got brave, and I think it was knowing that they had my back. It was probably the first time, in my career, people had come to me like that and said, listen, this is not even up for debate. Like, you need to go do this job. I remember Susan Wojcicki, we lost her earlier this year. She was the CEO of YouTube. She let Larry and Sergey the garage in the beginning. She came to me and she said, nobody else can do this job but you. And, to have someone like her, who was a legend at Google and who let Larry and Sergey the garage say that to me then 15 years ago, and really mean it, and then say to me, and by the way, I have got you every step of the way. Right. I'm going to be there with you. And by the way, she was. Through thick and thin, over my 21 years in the company, she was with me every step of the way. It was like my work's guardian angel in so many ways. And, to have that kind of a faith, I guess, that someone had that kind of faith in me gave me extraordinary confidence that I just didn't have, until really that moment.
Isn't that amazing when people see more in you than you see in yourself?
But I think we all do it. Like, even today, I there's a number of roles on my team where I've had to cajole and talk someone into this role, saying, to me, it's so obvious you're the perfect person. Why are you trying to talk yourself out of this? But by the way, the other thing I didn't tell you is when they approached me, these 3 guys, I said to them, I may be pregnant. It's very early, but you need to know that if I take this on, I'm going to be moving to the US pregnant and going mat leave pretty much 6 months after I start. And they said, what's that got to do with anything?
Right.
What is that even relevant?
Yeah.
Congratulations, but who cares? Why is that even relevant?
Barriers. We think that these things are going to be stoppers, and when people find out, they're going to tell us that we're wrong or that we don't actually have it. And everyone's like, no, just we want you. Come and do the job.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that you aren't a naturally technical person. So are you surprised that you have stayed in one of the most technical companies for this long?
No, I'm not surprised. I think you need all kinds of backgrounds in every company. Google is no exception. I love working with engineers. I find them fascinating. How they approach the world, how they think about solving problems. I mean, that's how they work. They literally are always trying to build products and features that are helpful and that solve problems for people. And that's inherently very creative in so many ways. In fact, I think the creativity of the engineers encourage my team and I to raise our bar. We have to almost outcreate the creatives in so many ways. And that said, I do think when you're a non-technical person in a technical world, you have your own kind of superpowers. And I think that's super valid, just as valid. And I think about it very much like know the user, know the magic, connect the two. And so, we can take all the complexity of a big, busy company like Google and we can distill it down into something that's super simple and relatable to a normal person who doesn't really care about all the sausage making or what it took to build these features, but actually really cares about just getting through their day and wants, something that's helpful for them and makes life a little bit easier for them.
Right. Does it work?
Does it work?
That's it.
Does it work? And why do I even need this? What's the why? And so I think that having a little bit more EQ, being a great storyteller, being able to put yourself in the shoes of other people, normal people who use your products, being able to represent them, be their champion internally in important meetings where decisions are made about those products, I think is a superpower you can have. And you can have a lot of influence in a company just by thinking that through.
You talk about EQ, emotional quotient, a lot. And you have a great quote where you said, I'm the EQ person in a world of IQ. Can you talk a little bit about how you define EQ and why you think it's so important?
I think of it as empathy. I think of it as putting yourself in the shoes of others and thinking about what their day is like and how you can help them. I think about it being helpful to customers and always putting customers first, putting the user first. And that, by the way, is something that's been in the DNA of Google since the very beginning, is put the user first and think about the user. So that's how I think about it.
Do you think EQ can be taught?
That's a very good question. Do I think EQ can be taught? I don't think EQ can be taught. There's a few things in life that I have found hard to teach. I think EQ is one. I think judgment is another. Taste. In marketing, all you see is the output.
Right.
All you see is the work. And I think it's tough to train on those things. Some people just innately have them and others don't.
Let's talk a little bit about EQ in an AI world. As AI changes jobs, changes entire industries, do you see EQ as playing a bigger role, smaller role? Kind of how does the importance of EQ change over time?
I think it remains as important as ever. Essentially, the humanness in all of us, the humanity in all of us is still critical. I see AI as an incredible co-pilot, as the latest set of tools we will all use or the latest toys we'll play with in our work. But the human element, is still as critical as ever and, in charge. And now we just have new tools to play with.
Right. From what I've seen, and I'd be curious your thoughts on this, is that AI can fool a lot of people who don't necessarily have EQ to thinking, well, I got this answer and it's good enough. Or this seems good. It answered the question. But it's other people who look at him like, it didn't really answer the question, or this sounds fake. Like being able to spot that uncanny valley feels like something that is almost going to be a new needed role as AI becomes, especially Gen AI becomes more and more a part of our world. Do you think that's right?
Well, I have a slightly different take on that in that I think, first of all, before AI, there was a lot of pretty mediocre things written, pretty mediocre work put out in the world and created by humans using all kinds of tools, by the way. And technology sometimes becomes a crutch for people rather than just the fundamentals of good writing, good storytelling, get to the point, do work that matters, that has impact and resonates in the world. There's no crutch. You may use different tools or toys to get the work done, but ultimately as editor, as creator, as maker, you own it.
Right.
And it needs to be good and good enough. And that's back to my point earlier about judgment and taste. And so AI is just the latest flavor of that. And so if you are working with an AI tool to do anything from, writing some copy or writing a blog post or summarizing a product to creating some assets like images or campaign assets, you're still the judge of what good looks like.
You talk a lot about learning and, figuring out how to change your career, change your role. Before we sat down, you had talked to me a little bit about your fight with cancer and how it changed how you thought about your career. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It was 8 years ago. I wasn't feeling great. I was feeling, wasn't feeling like myself. And I was very, very lucky that I had a doctor who said, let's just quickly run some blood tests. And, got the, life-changing news back that I had a very serious cancer called cholangiocarcinoma, bile duct cancer. Really tough cancer to get, very rare cancer to get, no proven sort of path forward. Apart from if you're operable, and thankfully I was operable. It's very rare to be operable with this cancer. In fact, every other person I've met at the time who had it did not make it through. So, people who are on this journey with me who share the same experiences, are now gone. And I think about them all the time and how I'm lucky and I'm still here and I'm in amazing health. And did change my approach to life and work and my health. And, I'm someone who never put myself first, really. I'm the eldest daughter. My mom died when I was in my early 20s. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I grew up, in rural Ireland, and I've worked hard all my life. I like to take care of everyone around me, and I probably didn't take as much care of myself as I should have. And, I paid the price for that. So I've become much more aware of my sleep and not trying to wing it with many nights of, few hours sleep or lack of sleep, but really just focusing on getting my sleep in and, prioritizing things like that.
And you run a global team. You just shut off your email at some point and you say, that's it for me?
Well, I do run a global team, and I've definitely, especially since I was diagnosed, been much more at peace about not responding to every email. I think there are things you have to let slide. So, for example, in the morning, when I wake up, I'll star all the emails that I really care about, that I want to reply to. And by the end of the day, I'll try and have gotten back to most of those. Right. But the rest, I let slide. You just can't be perfect at everything. And I'm at peace with the fact that I might miss one or two that someone may have to remind me about, and I'll get forgiven. I think it's okay. I think I've done okay.
You said when you came back, you tried to work as hard as you did before.
Actually, people sat me down and did a little bit of a mini intervention. And they said, Lorraine, you just can't work the way you worked before you got sick.
Right.
We want you involved, but you need to empower us and trust us too. And you can't just be in everything. My boss, Sundar, CEO of Google, he said to me, look, the way I work is I have 3 things that I am going deep in at any one point in time, and the rest I'm across, but nowhere near as involved. And you need to do the same. Another very important person in my life, Nikesh Arora, the CEO of Palo Alto Networks, we worked together for years. He said to me, Lorraine, you have to be more the chairwoman of marketing, less the COO, because he knows me. So I got so much wisdom when I came back in, and I took it to heart. I really took it to heart, and it changed how I work. I work way better as a leader since I got diagnosed than before.
Wow.
Now, there are many lapses in this, as my team would tell you, but I certainly, in generally, have worked much more smartly, and I think I am far better as a leader as a result.
What's the advice that you would give to people then?
I do think all of these jobs, no matter where you work, they're at least a middle distance race, if not a marathon, and you can't do them at a sprint pace. And so you do have to take time to process. Now I'm pretty religious about having work blocks in the day. I point out to folks, for example, meetings are not work. They're not the real work. They're in the way of the real work. There need to be hours in your calendar to do the real work.
Any resolutions for 2025 for you, and anything that you would like to see your teams doing in the next year?
I still think we try and do too much. That's very much a big part of who we are at Google. There's always an awful lot going on. And so really just focusing and prioritizing on the things that really matter and just doing them well and being proud of our work, I think would be the biggest thing.
Thanks for joining. Be sure to tune in for the second half of my interview with Lorraine Twohill, the powerhouse CMO of the most influential brand in the world, Google.